Hello, I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and today I'm here with Whimsy Stamps sharing how I made a super adorable Doggy Halloween card featuring the Doggies Halloween Stamp Set as well as the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set. Now, my plan for this card is since there is that one adorable little image of the dog in the pumpkin, the little jack-o'-lantern, I wanted to stamp him, color him, and then put him into the pumpkin patch using the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set. So I started by first stamping the dog image as well as a sentiment. I decided to go with the less tricks, more treats sentiment onto a 100-pound Hammermill cardstock, which is an alcohol marker friendly paper, using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink, which is also an alcohol marker friendly ink. Now this stamp set features a lot of different images and sentiments. It features 5 main little doggy images wearing different Halloween costumes, as well as 4 accessory images. One is a star, a moon, a cauldron, and then a little pumpkin trick-or-treat pail, as well as 6 very punny and cute matching sentiments. Once the image and sentiment was stamped out, I then fussy cut them using a pair of spring-assisted scissors, and then moved on to die cutting the pumpkins that I needed to make my pumpkin patch. Since I'm going to be coloring the pumpkins using alcohol markers, I die cut the pumpkins using a 100-pound Hammermill cardstock, which is the exact same cardstock I use when I'm coloring stamped images. Of course, you can use ink blending, you can color the pumpkins however you want, you can use just solid cardstock. However, I really like the look of coloring my die cuts, and it is kind of a fun process to do, so that's what I decided to go with today. Now, the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set, as you may gather from the name, is of course for building a pumpkin patch. So the die set features a lot of really fun dies. For doing this, it features a really big pumpkin, some more medium-sized pumpkins, and then a ton of little small pumpkins. It also features a bunch of different leaves. I was debating about throwing some of those into the pumpkin patch, but ultimately I decided just to go with the pumpkins. For the card I made today, I ended up using the big pumpkin die, 2 of the mid-sized pumpkins, as well as 3 of the small pumpkins. I suppose one of the main reasons I didn't end up putting in the leaves is I wanted to keep the coloring for this card pretty simple. As you saw on the color chart combination that I shared right before I started coloring the pumpkin here, I only ended up using 2 different color combinations. Of this, I'm using Ohuhu alcohol markers. It's the alcohol marker I always use. I ended up going with an orange color combination for, of course, the pumpkin, and then a brown, which can then be used for the stem of the pumpkin as well as the dog. If I ended up putting the leaves in, I would have overcomplicated things and thrown in at least 3 more different color combinations, so I wanted to keep it pretty simple for today's card. Of course, as I already mentioned, I am using Ohuhu alcohol markers to color my image and the die cuts today. If you would like, I have the colors that I am currently using up on the screen in the bottom left-hand corner to make it easy to see exactly what color I am using at all times. You can also rewind the video a little bit, go back to that chart that I shared if you would like to kind of color match depending on whatever project you are working on, or if you want to create something similar to what I am doing. Coloring the pumpkins using the alcohol markers, I first started using my darkest color, working up to my lightest color. This is also how I colored the dog image as well. For the pumpkin, I first started using my darkest color, which in this color combination is YR180, going all the way around the pumpkin, and then using that same color to create the natural ridges that you usually see on a pumpkin. The die cuts included in the Build a Pumpkin Patch die set for the larger pumpkin as well as the more mid-sized pumpkins give a bit of an indication as to where these natural ridges would be. So using that kind of as my guide, that's how I drew the lines in the pumpkin to make it look more natural using the alcohol markers. After I was done using the alcohol markers, I then very lightly went in to add a little bit of extra color and shading using some Prismacolor Premier Colored pencils. Because all the pumpkins are done in the same way, I only showed the coloring process for the one pumpkin and then the doggy image. Now that everything is colored, I moved on to creating a pretty simple background. Since I want the pumpkin patch to be the star of the show, for the background, all I did was create a very simple ink blended background using some spiced marmalade distress oxide. I placed my A2 size card base onto a sticky mat just to make sure it wouldn't bend while I was ink blending, and created a fade of distress oxide starting from the bottom, fading to white as it goes to the top. On the card, you can see a little bit of a mark there. That's actually from the tape I placed in the card just so it wouldn't flap open as I was ink blending. However, I'm not too worried about this, and I'm not too worried if the blend is a little uneven in some spots, as the pumpkin patch, especially considering there is the big pumpkin that I'm including, will be covering most of this. To finish off the background, I did something that I seem to include in a ton of my cards, is some splatter. I used a bleed-proof white paint for the white just so it wouldn't pick up any of this orange ink underneath, and then black acrylic paint for the black splatter. I placed the white and black onto my glass matte work surface, sprayed it with some water that I have in a spray bottle, and then splattered it directly onto the card using a fan brush. If you're impatient like me, you can always use a heat gun to speed up the drying process. Something I do want to say is that if you buy a bottle of paint, especially acrylic paint for only splattering purposes, it will take you a very long time to go through because all you really need is a single drop, spray it with water, it dilutes it down a bit, and then you splatter with it. A bottle of acrylic paint that you can get really from anywhere will last you a very long time. To finish everything off, I glued all of the elements, including the pumpkin die cuts, the stamped image, as well as my sentiment, onto my A2 size card base using some liquid adhesive glue. You'll see sometimes I will pick things up and kind of readjust them quickly before the glue dries. I do this all the time. Sometimes I end up cutting it out, sometimes I leave it in, but I'm always kind of rearranging the placement and playing around with exactly how I want everything to look until the very last second. As I glue down all the tiny little pumpkins to make sure that they don't come off because they are so small and quite frankly easy to lose, I placed an acrylic block on them to make sure they dry nice and flat on top of the card. And that is the completed card project. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to check out the description below for a list of the Whimsy Stamps products I used to create this card, as well as links to shop if you would like, as well as links to both my social media and the Whimsy Stamp social media. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.